So the middle class is changing, and it's gonna blow your mind where it's going. Between inflation, job market shifts, globalism or the end of globalism, the rising cost of goods and services, all of this is forcing the middle class into a transformation like never before. And you are probably caught up in it. So in today's video, what we're gonna do is we're gonna uncover what the middle class is, how it's evolved over the years, and what that means for your financial future. My name's Chris Naugle. This is What Now? What's next for the middle class? So in order to talk about the middle class, I think it's important to define what the middle class is. So if you go to the Oxford Dictionary, basically what it says is, it's the economic group between the upper and lower classes, which includes professionals and business workers and their families. But I think the key question we're getting at is, how has the middle class changed? And that's interesting because you can go right here and check this out. In 1945, the median middle class income was $2,000 a year. Now, adjusted for inflation, that's $35,448.65. But then come to 2024, let's talk about the median middle class income today, and it's $58,021 to $94,000. That's a big shift. But how has that shift not improved families' lifestyles all that much from 1945? As a matter of fact, I would argue that today, even though the middle class shows they're making more money, they are struggling and taking on more debt than ever before in history. So I remember growing up and in school, you kind of knew who were the families that had money. And I remember thinking the families that had lawyers or the doctors, they were the wealthy ones. They were the untouchables. And this is just me. But let's really define what the occupations and incomes of the middle class are. Check this out right here. Teachers, $64,390 a year. Now that's a source from US Bureau of Labor Statistics. But also, remember I said lawyers? I remember in school, the families that had a dad or a mom that were attorneys, they were the wealthy ones. Well, not so much. In today's world, lawyers are making right about $145,000 a year. As a matter of fact, I remember doing another YouTube video where I was looking at an attorney just coming out of school. Now, remember, it takes like 6 years of schooling and you gotta pass the bar exam to become an attorney. And when attorneys enter the workforce, they make less than somebody probably just working at a restaurant for tips. I'm being serious. So when you talk about an attorney and how much they make at $145,000, now some make a lot more, but that's the average, they are barely getting by in today's world. Now, I know some of you are thinking, oh, $145,000 isn't just getting by, but in some parts of the country, New York City, most parts of California, and other areas, $145,000 is scraping by. But let's keep going. Garbage workers, like this I didn't think was gonna be this low. A garbage worker making $37,840 a year. Come on, can these guys get a raise? But then mechanics, $42,090, and doctors, $236,000. Now, remember I said growing up, the lawyers and the doctors were the wealthy ones. Now, I'm not saying $236,000 is a low income, but if you know a doc that's a general physician, they're not really crushing it. They're not doing bad, but they're working so many hours. And it's the same for attorneys. They work a ridiculous amount of hours. So yes, their income's a little bit more than that of a teacher, a garbage worker, or other occupations like mechanics. They are working double the hours in most cases. So are they really making more per hour, or are they just putting in more time and less time with their families? And we are seeing that shift as well, but we're not going to cover that today. Let's keep going. Let me hit on one last thing before we move past this. Let's talk about the attorneys, the doctors, and the teachers. 3 occupations that all fall in the middle class that require extensive amount of schooling. How much does it cost to go to college to become a teacher, a doctor, or a lawyer? Quite a bit. So when we talk about those higher incomes that they're experiencing, they're also carrying significantly more debt, and their cost of living is significantly higher because they have to live a specific type of lifestyle to attract the clients they want, especially if you're an attorney. So therefore, your cost of living is simply higher. Your debt load is also higher. Now hold on, this is where stuff gets real. This is where I was like, what? Check this article out by Yahoo Finance right here. And how they call it is where you rank by income and net worth. Check this out. The lower class is less than $30,000 in income, where the lower middle class is between $30,000 and $1.58. Middle class is, as we already talked, $58,000 to $94,000. Upper middle class, interesting, $94,000 to $153,000. And then the upper class is defined as anyone with a greater than $153,000 income. Now that blows my mind. But let's look at this part. When you rank by net worth, because some folks like to rank by the net worth versus the income, lower class, $12,000 in net worth. Lower middle class, $61,260, which is primarily their home. Middle class, $145,000 and change. Upper middle class, $269,100, and upper class is defined with a net worth of $805,400 or more. Pretty interesting when you start defining things by income and net worth. It's a drastic difference, but it also goes to show you why the rich keep getting richer, as you heard. But it's not because the system is swayed heavily in favor of the upper class or the upper middle class. It's because the system is simply designed when you have assets, you can build on those assets. And I personally can speak on that. I know when I was struggling back with lots of debt, not a lot of income, a lot of things were going on, I remember those days where it just felt you could never get ahead. You had debts and you had income, but you didn't have the assets that were building. Simply, you couldn't benefit from uninterrupted compounding interest or even compound interest, because to do that, you must have assets that are compounding. And when you're just dealing with income coming in and income going out to pay debts and expenses, it's just a circle that is hard to get out of, but not impossible. And I will show you in today's video exactly how to change that and how to build wealth through your debts and expenses, but how to benefit from something that the wealthiest families in history have always used, that every one of you could use, including the lower class. But before we do that, let's just pause for a second and hit that subscribe button. This is how we continue on. It's because you subscribe. So click the subscribe button. There's a little bell up top. What I want you to do is I want you to smash that bell. You can just give it a little poke if you want to, but what that's going to do is notify you every time we put a new video out or when we go live. So let's dive back into this. Now, there's another thing we have to understand about the middle class, and that there's 4 key factors that are going to determine what range you fall in. Now, these key factors fall into, as we said, household income. That I already went over. But another thing is family size. If you've got a larger family, obviously it takes more income to support that family. Not only that, how about your geographic location? Where you live matters. Because I mentioned earlier, New York City and places like California, way higher cost of living. So therefore, if you're an attorney making $145,000, you simply are not making it in New York City or LA. So therefore, those attorneys get paid more in those areas, or at least I hope they do. And to just prove that point, check this article by CNBC. Right here it says, you can make $200,000 a year and still be middle class in these 3 states, and they're not California or New York, as I was saying. Check this out. Here is the median household income broken down by state. This is pretty interesting to see too. Alabama, look at Alaska. Arizona, I thought Arizona would have been much higher than that. California, I also would have thought would have been significantly higher, but I guess that's a population thing. I mean, you can kind of just go through and you can look at all these different states, but Hawaii. Have any of you ever been to Hawaii? Freaking expensive, but it makes sense. They got to bring everything in by boats and planes. So right there, if you live in Hawaii, your median household income is $97,360. Seems like a lot, but go talk to some Hawaiians that are making 97. They're not crushing it. I'm just telling you. Massachusetts is an interesting one. Look at that. Median household income, $106,000. And the middle class income range goes up to $213,000. Definitely wouldn't have thought that. But let's look at one that's really low. Mississippi. Mississippi, the median household income is 55 grand and it peaks out at 110,000. So here are the challenges that the middle class is facing. First off, the economic pressures that we've been through ever since the pandemic. During the pandemic, everybody had money, or at least it seemed like everybody had money. The government was handing it out, we were getting all sorts of checks, but most importantly, we really couldn't spend any money because we couldn't go anywhere. So therefore, there was a unique shift. People started saving more money and paying down debt. It was a massive shift from where we were at. But then when everything opened back up, it flipped, debt started climbing, and now is at record highs, and savings were being depleted. So why was that? Well, there's been a bunch of things that happened. When they printed all that money, it drove inflation up. Inflation made our dollars buy less. You noticed it because of higher prices at the supermarket and for gas and everything else. So prices went up, but incomes remained stagnant. And not only that, only recently in the last couple of years, we've seen the Fed raising interest rates to combat the high inflation, which now to buy a car, a house, or anything that you're gonna finance, your interest rates are significantly higher. Now, prior to that, when we were in the low interest rate cycle, one of the things the middle class benefited from was lower payments due to lower interest rates. But a lot of those interest rates were variable. So when the Fed raised rates, guess what? Your costs all went up. The cost on your credit cards, your lines of credit, big time on lines of credit, and anything that had a variable interest rate, your cost went up. But again, your income didn't. So it was an interesting thing. You felt like you were doing better, but all you were doing is racking up more debt and more payments, which we haven't even seen the full story, how that's gonna unfold. This is what caught my attention when going through this. The middle class income has lagged behind the upper class since 1970. You would have thought we could have got a hold of this, but you know what? I almost feel like everything is designed to squeeze and squeeze out the middle class. So we just have a lower and upper class, and it does seem like that's exactly what's happening. The report defines middle income households are having incomes that are 2/3 to twice that of the US median household income. And the income figures are also adjusted for household size, as I mentioned. But if you're watching the news, as this article says, the economy is booming. Yet many Americans are still gasping for air financially. They simply don't have the breathing room to plan beyond their present needs. Now that is interesting. And I'll start this one off by saying what once was a luxury is now a necessity. And there are signs that the middle class is dialing back its spending. And those signs can be seen by looking at fast food joints or the mainstay dining destinations where the middle income consumers typically were going and spending money. They are slowing that down. They're leaning into the discounted places. They're buying when sales are being posted. And I see this all the time. But I guess that makes perfect sense because as you all know, restaurants definitely raised their prices on their menus because their costs went up. And these restaurants were betting on customers being able to spend more money, which they were able to, but not anymore. And then the good old Target, well, Target to most of you, but Target is definitely a good one to look at because if you look at their May reports, their same store sales dropped 3.7% during their last quarter of that year. So you can see it. The more you read this article, the more you can see the middle income spenders are dialing back because they're being squeezed. It almost feels as if we're living in a recessionary time, but we're not yet. Notice how I said yet? You see, that will be one of the videos we get to do soon, the recession video. Because it's coming, folks. You can see it, you can feel it, and you just know we're going to be entering a recession. However, if you watch the news, everything's great. The economy's booming, everything's doing good, well, except for the last couple of days in the market where it's been pulling back severely. So, we gotta get you ready. We gotta get you ready for the core problem. And that problem is high debts, high cost of living are squeezing you. And we need to basically flip that. But you're probably saying, how do I flip it when I'm making money and it's all going back out the door? Well, how you do that is by learning something called the infinite banking concepts. The infinite banking concepts is nothing more than a process. It is not a product. It is a process of you and everyone else taking back the banking functions in their life. Now, let me just kind of give you an example. I want you to just think of one of the credit cards that you pay every single month. Now, I want you to think about the interest rate that that credit card is charging you. 20, 25, almost 30%, right? And you're making payments on this, but it never seems like you're getting ahead. Now, if you applied this process of taking back the banking functions and you were to, through a mechanism, pay off or pay down that debt, but yet still make the same monthly payment, but you made that same monthly payment back to yourself. I know that doesn't make sense, but it's so easy. All you would have to do is you'd have to find a way to save up some money. Now, you're already saving today, but people are saving at the expense of their futures. Now, let me define that. People are putting money in 401ks to get the match, and they're maxing 401ks out trying to pad for the retirement. I get it. There's nothing wrong with that. But in doing that, you are accruing debt that is charging you a higher interest rate than what your money in your 401k is making. Let me just give you an example. If you're in the market, okay, in an index fund, let's just say you're making 9% as an average, and then over here you're paying out 25% on a credit card. Does you see the logical explanation here? Why would you pay 25 to make 9? Stop putting money in the 401k or dial it back or take a loan from the 401k and pay down the high interest credit cards. But when you do that, this is where people make the biggest mistake. They'd stop making the same payment. If they pay off a credit card, what they do is they just say, okay, I paid it off, and then they spend that money somewhere else. That is not how you get ahead. Once you take the loan from the 401k or just save up the money by dialing back what you're putting in the 401k, what you're gonna do is you're gonna deploy that money to pay off your credit card debts. Now, when you pay off the credit card debts, what you're gonna do is you're literally gonna make the same payment you used to make to the credit card every single month, but you're gonna make that payment back to the original source. So if the money came from a loan from your 401k, you're gonna make that same payment back to the 401k. Now, if you use the 401k, here's how it would work. When you took the loan from the 401k, the money came out of the market, so it stopped earning for you, but it paid off a credit card that you were paying, let's just say 25%. When you make the payment back to the 401k, it's like paying yourself back or recycling and recapturing, as I like to call it, 25% interest, because that's what you were giving away, and now you're recapturing that. Now, let's just say your 401k charges you 8%. What you would do is take the amount you were paying the credit card, let's just do 20%, minus the 8 you were charged on the loan, that would be the spread. But here's the thing, with the 401k, the loan interest they charge goes right back into your account. You're not making the difference, you're making the amount plus the interest you're being charged. It's a combination. That's an easy way to get ahead, but the best way is by consistently and persistently saving money. We have a major savings problem in this country. And that savings problem isn't that most American families are not trying to save. It's that they're saving all wrong. How we've been taught to save money, we've been taught to take money that's left over after we pay all of our bills and our expenses, and then whatever's left over, and sometimes there isn't any, we take that and we put it where we've been told. 401ks, bank accounts, CDs, where that money sits for 5, 10, 15 years in some cases to compound. Now, we lose access to that money in some cases. So therefore, we start accumulating more debts while we're trying to build our wealth. If we just build wealth through our debts and expenses, by the way I explained, that's the way. Now, one last thing. For the infinite banking concepts, the process, to really work for you, what you need to do is change where your savings goes first, and also how you think about savings. You see, one of the first laws of wealth is you must keep 10% of what you make. Keep meaning save. So we need to put savings ahead of everything else. I know that doesn't seem right. You're like, no, I gotta pay my bills first. Wrong. You gotta pay yourself first and then pay your bills. But when you pay yourself first, we change one thing, and that is where your savings goes. We don't put it into their bank, we put it into our own banking system. So we're gonna use a different product, a product that the wealthiest families in history have used. And we're gonna use this product for the same reason they did. And that is, we get to save and spend at the same time. Now, that may not make any sense, but I'm gonna put a video up when we're done here that's gonna allow you to understand fully what I'm talking about, or you can just click the video link in the bio and watch the full video. But here's what I mean by save and spend at the same time. Imagine you have found a place, a product where you could park your savings, and that place pays you a guaranteed interest rate plus dividends. But it allows you to then use that money, okay? Use that money to go do something else and make money a second time. This is how you make money twice on the same dollar. Now, you're probably thinking, how can I use the money and still make money on that dollars? Well, that's easy. It's called uninterrupted compounding interest. You don't use your actual money. Your money stays in the account earning guaranteed interest and dividends while you take a loan from that institution and you use that loan to make money a second time. But before you go make money taking risk, you pay off your debts because your debts are charging you a higher interest rate than you're going to make on safe money investing it. So you're going to use your debts to build your wealth. Now, that was a lot to unpack right there, and I understand, and I don't want to go deep into that product, that place, that machine where you're going to park your money. I just want you to know that that machine will allow you to make money twice on the same dollar, but you're going to have to watch another video to learn that. Now, let's get back to the main point. The middle class is changing. So if you are in the middle class by definition, and you've got lazy money sitting there, maybe it's in bank accounts, 401ks, maybe it's just in the walls of your house in the form of equity, you must start to learn how to do this. And how you're gonna learn to do this is by watching the video in the bio. And I'll also put the video up at the end of this. But it's a 90-minute video. Now right there, you're like, oh, that's a long video. Would you spend 90 minutes of your time if you knew it would change your financial future forever? That's the question I'm asking you. Is 90 minutes worth your financial future? Well, I'll tell you, it is, because it changed my financial future and over 16,000 of our clients' financial futures. So folks, this is your calling card. This is where you draw the line in the sand and you make a decision. Are you gonna keep doing what you're doing, keep living the life you are, keep feeling squeezed, or are you gonna get out of the rat race and do something different? Something the wealthiest families throughout history have done to maintain, to build, and preserve their wealth. It's your decision, and it's 90 minutes away. Let me put that into perspective. You spent years of your life going to school to be in the occupation you are. You probably spent 90 minutes or more scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok just looking for videos that excite you. So all I'm saying is it's 90 minutes of your time to change, I'm serious, change your financial future. Because when you learn the infinite banking concept, you will become your own banker. You will take back control of your money and you will learn how to tap into one of the most powerful things in the financial industry, says Albert Einstein, and that is called uninterrupted compounding interest. In other words, your money working for you 24/7. Folks, thanks for joining me for today's video. And if you liked this video, you're gonna wanna check this one out, the 90-minute video that will change your financial future. Thanks for joining us. This has been another episode of What Now? What's Next for the Middle Class. See you next time.